Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. House of Earth and Blood is book one in Sarah J. Maas's new Crescent City series. After the death of her closest friends, Bryce Quinlan is determined to find the culprit, even if that means teaming up with notorious fallen angel Hunt Athalar. Bryce and Hunt begin to learn that not all is as it seems in Crescent City, and there is a dangerous threat lurking that they must find before it destroys their city. Yay! A new Sarah J. Maas series. I have previously read the Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy, which I freaking adored. I love that world. So I've definitely been pretty anxious to read a new Sarah J. Maas book. So yay, the start of a new, what I'm assuming a new trilogy. And I definitely really liked this first book, you guys. Yeah, I'm gonna admit right now, I did initially have a pretty rough start with this book. For probably a good, I don't know, for maybe a good 200 pages or so. And this is a very long book, you guys. This book is like 800 pages. So yeah, me saying 200 pages, that's really just a very small portion of this book. But yeah, for the first 200 pages or so, I did find the book a little bit slow, a little bit tedious. I wasn't entirely enjoying it, and I kept waiting for the story to pick up and, you know, give me a reason. Why should I care for these characters? So, after the initial rough 200 pages, I did definitely find myself thoroughly enjoying this book and finally starting to get engaged with it, finally starting to like the characters, and yeah, most importantly, discovering where exactly the story was even going. Because yeah, the initial beginning, the setup, it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? Where is this going exactly? And so yeah, if you're kind of like me and you're like, oh boy, this is a rough beginning, try to see if you can get past it, because I think it is definitely well worth it once you get deeper and deeper into the book. Because Sarah J. Maas, she definitely takes her time building up this narrative. Like I said, it's 800 freaking pages long. So there's a lot of setup at the beginning. There's a lot of setting up who all the various different characters are, because you have a pretty large cast of characters, and at first a lot of people kind of seems like, okay, is this character even really necessary? But yeah, by the time you get to the end, a lot of just random characters really finally come into being in the end and really serve a point and purpose to the narrative. And so yeah, you got a lot of building up all the various different characters. You have a lot of building up what the exact story is that's trying to be told. And yeah, the world building in this book is kind of intense, because there's a lot going on. You're kind of just thrown into this world of Crescent City. It's essentially a fantasy world, if you will, but it's a fantasy world that's rather modern, which was, I found that initially very strange, because it's like you have this fantasy world of fairies, or fae as they're called, fae, witches, vampires, angels, demons. Seriously, the list goes on with all the supernatural beings. And at first I kind of found that a little weird, because I was expecting something a bit more, maybe with a medieval touch to it. But no, this is like very modern. The characters, they drive cars, they use cell phones, they have computers. But yeah, it takes place in a world that's not our world, if that makes sense. It's some sort of fantasy world. Like imagine like Westeros, for instance, because, you know, Westeros is very medieval, but imagine if Westeros, in a couple thousand years, all of a sudden the people of Westeros got computers and technology and cars. That's kind of what this is. So what is actually going on in this book? Once the book does get going and you do start to see kind of where the flow is going, where things are going, this book is essentially kind of like a a cross between a murder investigation and kind of doing some investigating into like some shady drug dealings and whatnot. It's very fascinating. And yeah, our main character is Bryce Quinlan. She's half human, half fae. She kind of works a really shitty job that she doesn't particularly want to work at. And 2 years prior, because in the book you have the setup that you see Bryce and her friends and her closest friends, something happens and her friends wind up dead. That's not a spoiler, you guys. That literally happens kind of very much near the beginning of this book, and yeah, the synopsis even tells you that her closest friends get murdered. So Bryce's friends, they get murdered at the beginning of this book. So then, yeah, you have a flash forward 2 years. Bryce is still grieving. She's just feeling really tortured about what happened and maybe her responsibility in that. And so what happens next, there's another series of murders that happen, and the murders mimic what happened to her friends 2 years prior. So in comes the very sexy, you guys, it's a Sarah J. Maas book. Of course there's going to be a sexy dude in here. In comes the very sexy fallen angel, Hunt Athalar, and it's his job to investigate this new crop of murders that's popping up, and this leads him like directly in the path of Bryce, and the two of them have to essentially team up. And what I do love about the Bryce and Hunt's relationship initially, because they don't have like insta love. They're not instantly head over heels in love with one another. They initially just don't get along. They don't really even care about the other, what the other's business is. They definitely build up a quick sense of wit and banter with one another, which was pretty hilarious. And yeah, like I said, it's a Sarah J. Maas book. You know, there's bound to definitely be a little bit of romance that happens between Bryce and Hunt. But yeah, it's kind of the joy of this book is building up that relationship, because yeah, the relationship, like I said, it's 800 pages. The relationship spreads across all 800 pages and really builds up their dynamic and how they do really come to trust one another and kind of fall in love with one another. So yeah, it's definitely a bit of a romance amidst this series of murders and this shady drug business kind of going on in the background. It's an intense book, you guys. It's all sorts of crazy, but I loved it. Another bonus to this book, let me kind of backtrack to some of the world building really quickly. What I do love about the very beginning of this book, since this is a fantasy world, and I always do appreciate a good map, you guys. I always appreciate a good map to a fantasy world. So there is a map here at the very start of the book provided about Crescent City, what it looks like, which is really nice, because sometimes I couldn't quite figure out what the hell Crescent City looked like, so I would always kind of go back to this, and this was a very helpful tool while I was reading, to be quite honest. And like I said, this world is inhabited by witches, fae, vampires, angels, demons, mer people. There's also this little thing at the very beginning as well that tells you about all the various different houses or courts in Crescent City. You know, who belongs where the fae belong, where the vampires belong, the demons, whatever. This is also really handy as well as you're reading. And yeah, back to the characters very quickly. I definitely really enjoyed these characters. Bryce is a great heroine to the story. I think she's very relatable. She might not be the most likable, but you can understand where she's coming from. I definitely like learning her backstory and her half-fae background. I definitely loved Hunt Athalar, you guys. Sarah J. Maas always has some great male heroes. I always appreciate them. Very sexy, very brooding. He's a fallen angel, you guys. But what's a fallen angel to do but brood and be sexy? I definitely really liked learning about his backstory. Once again, the Hunt and Bryce relationship. I love the witty banter, the initial hatred, but then the eventual romance. It was great. And then the various other characters that populate this world, you guys, I loved everybody. I loved Hunt's group of friends. I liked Bryce's group of friends. The antagonists were really great. I feel like this is a problem in all of Sarah J. Maas's books, though, that she has some really good antagonists, but it's like she doesn't really flesh them out that much. You don't ever really get to see their point of view that much, because she does. She focuses on the protagonists more than anything. So sometimes the antagonists kind of just linger in the background, and you don't entirely get all of their motives. You'll kind of get the big villain speech at the end of all of her books, what the villain is up to, and that happens once again in here. It's like I said, she always has some good villains, but it's like I always want more, you know, I always crave more, because I do love me a good villain. So a big thing about this book, how it's being promoted, this book was being promoted that it was like Sarah J. Maas's first adult novel. That seems to be like the big cliche or whatever this year of these former young adult authors writing adult novels, which is, I don't know how I feel about that. But this book, I do think, in my opinion, because I think a lot of people don't feel the same way, I do think this book did come across as an adult book, because I've read a few like urban fantasies in the past, and this felt like an adult urban fantasy sort of book to me. The way it was written and laid out and whatnot, and it felt adult to me, I guess, whatever that may mean. And yeah, my review, because I did a review for Veronica Roth's Chosen One series, and that book was also being promoted as an adult book, but for my review of that, I was going on that didn't feel like an adult book. That still just felt like a young adult book to me, rather than an adult book. So I was a little concerned heading into this book, like, okay, this is claiming to be an adult book, but is it really? Is it just going to be like the Chosen Ones, that's just going to come across as a young adult book? But I definitely feel like this book came across as a lot more mature. It had a lot more mature characters and just more mature situations compared to the Chosen Ones book, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's it for this review of this book, you guys, of Crescent City, Book 1. Thoroughly loved it, loved the story, loved the characters. Even after an initial rough start, I'm glad this book picked up, because I really wanted to enjoy it, and I'm glad to say that I really did enjoy it, and I'm definitely excited for the next book in the series to see how this continues. So you guys, that's it for this book review. In the comments below, have you guys read this first book in the Crescent City series? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.